Welcome back to Canyon Hobbies. We appreciate you joining us. Thanks for joining us. We do appreciate it. We went out bashing the other night, and I did a boo-boo. And now my gears make some crazy obnoxious noises. When this happens, I want to show you what to look at first, because sometimes it's a pretty easy repair. Actually, most of the time on the X-Maxx it is. So when you go out bashing and your gears start grinding, which is common, what normally causes it is when you're in the air doing your backflip, you've got the throttle going and you hit the ground with your wheels moving at that momentum, and all of a sudden they slam to a stop. That momentum usually takes out your gears. And sometimes putting heavier steel gears in there helps. Sometimes it ends up just breaking other things. But just to do the repair and go back to the factory gears, and I don't know what my gearing is, so we'll find that out as we go into it. But we're going to look at those gears and replace them today. So thanks again for joining us. The two tools that you need for the X-Maxx pretty much get you through everything is the 2.0 and the 2.5 millimeter. They'll get you pretty much every screw on here. We'll start by taking the cover off here, this caution maybe hot cover. This will give you access to the gears. And these gears, it's the pinion gear on the motor and the main spur gear going into the transmission. So just with two screws, taking this cover off. That one's a little bit longer screw. Once you get it off, just get it out there real nicely, you got the cover off. And if you look closely, you can see one thing right off the bat. My pinion gear came loose from the motor. This is another common issue, unfortunately. Over time, I think what happens is your shaft of your motor gets a little bit of a blemish, and sometimes it's harder to keep your pinion on there. There are some tricks to that, and we'll do another video and share those tricks on how to get that pinion to hold better. But just looking at this one, you can see I've lost a tooth, and that's probably what was making my noise. But I also want to look at my spur gear, because losing that gear potentially could have hurt my spur gear as well. So with 4 more screws, we can take this cover off right here. This cover that holds the spur gear into the transmission. And it is just 4 easy screws. And my magnetism of my driver is not working very well. But you got the longer screws on this side. And the shorter screws on this side. With those screws out, this cover should come off. I just kind of pry it up a little bit, and then I actually use the gear to bring it all out. So hold that. Didn't want to stay on there. Now, as you're taking this out, if you lean it too far, this bearing likes to fall off, and that's kind of obnoxious. Anytime you have this out, I do recommend looking at these bearings. They're pretty small bearings for what they're doing. This is a pretty hot area. There's a lot of speed here. These bearings are doing a lot of work. So always check them and replace as needed. Actually, this bearing here on mine is going to get replaced because it doesn't feel smooth. This one's still doing good, so we'll keep that one, but I'm going to end up replacing this one. And we'll look at the part numbers for that. But then just inspect this. my gears look all right. And actually my Spur gear, I did put the hot racing heavier Spur gear on there last time I did it. And that's probably why I took out my Pinion and not my Spur gear this time, which I'm okay with. Pinions aren't too expensive, and my Spur gear is still okay. So I'm running a 50 and a 16, or an 18. What was that? It's an 18. So I'm running a 50 and an 18. I do like this gearing right now. It gives me plenty of speed for doing a backflip, plenty of speed to race around and have fun with. So I'm probably going to keep it that way for now. Let me go find a Pinion and I'll be right back. All right, so now that you have that out, like I always say, it's a good time to clean things up a little bit, at least in the area where you're working. Keep your car running nice, keep it clean. I usually go in and kind of wipe things out. If you have an air can, these are great tools to use to clean. The main thing with this is just where the cover lands. You want it to be able to sit back down all the way when you put it back on. So clean those edges out, clean the edges out around here. They do like to get a lot of dirt on them. So I like to blow that out. Try not to get anything to fall down into the transmission, except for grease. So once you get that kind of clean, I do recommend adding a little grease. And the grease that I use, I just go to O'Reilly and get some marine grease, pick that up. It's nice because it's a good gear grease, but it also helps keep the water off of your gears and other things that you're greasing, keep the water off your bearings. I just use a screwdriver, just add a little bit on this gear. You don't need to go crazy because there already should be some grease in there, but kind of gets splashed off, right? So it's not a bad idea to add some while you got it open. Keep those gears clean and kind of helps cool them off as well. Now I went and grabbed the bearing that I didn't like. It was kind of grungy, so I went and got some bearings. It's the 5180. You can do the blue cover or the black. To be honest, I don't know what the difference is. I like the black ones just because they're black, but I don't know the difference. This cost is the same. So they have the 5180 and the 5180A. If somebody knows the difference, tell me in the chat. Let me know, because I've always wondered that and I just keep forgetting to ask. But I'll put a new bearing on here. The best way to grease them up is just take one of the covers off. I just use a blade, just kind of poke it in one side and lift it out. This one actually has more grease than I've seen in them for a long time, so maybe Traxxas is figuring that out, but we'll still add some of our marine grease because it is kind of water repellent, keeps things from rusting, and I like to have it nice and packed with grease so it lasts a long time. And just put the cover back on, make sure you put it on the right direction. Keep it sealed. And then we'll put that back in there. So if you open this and you find out your spur gear is damaged and needs replaced, the nice thing is it's only 3 screws. You'll have the 3 screws here. There's 6, but only the 3 that take the gear off is all you need to do. It is a good time to check your I forget what they call it, the cush drive. There is a rubber cushion in here that kind of helps with the impact as you're driving. That cushion does get wore out, so that's a good time. It's a good time to check that too. Mine feels good because I know I replaced it recently, so we're okay there. But then, very carefully, without dumping your bearing off, which I do all the time, get this back in here. And it's because you have to tip it in, and that's why that bearing comes off. So kind of just hold it on there, get it into position. Should drop right in there. And put your cover back on. And start with the long screws because they're easy. And screw those down. Now you don't want to strip this. It is going into plastic and it's going into your bulkhead. You want it snug, but you don't want to over tighten it and accidentally strip it, because then it allows flex there, and that'll take your gears out even more often. So keep that nice. And as you saw, I did have a metal cover. It comes with a plastic cover if you get the normal X-Maxx. The X-Maxx Ultimate will have the metal cover, but I do recommend the metal cover. It just helps keep it so there's not as much flex right there, which allows your gear mesh to come apart and could end up damaging your gears as well. So it's another way to help with those gears getting damaged. And it's a pretty simple one. So now I had an 18 in there. Traxxas does make a hardened machine gear for that. The part number is 6491R. I'm not going to put that one in. I kind of like that to be a fail point for mine. If I damage it, I kind of want to be there. It's an easy repair. I don't want it to damage somewhere else. So that's kind of my fail point that I've found that works good for me. Not always is that the case for other people, because sometimes it gets annoying. But I found that I drive decent enough that I'm not breaking it as often, and but when I do, I know it's because I did something dumb. And so I kind of like to keep that a fail-safe point. So I'm putting in a 6491X, which is just an 18 gear M1 Pinion. I do recommend, when putting this into, it's already got some thread lock on it, but I recommend adding a little more thread lock. This is another help for what over time kind of wears out on your shaft. It'll kind of help keep that seated so it doesn't slide on and off and drive you crazy when you're out driving. So a lot of people use red on their pinion, but I just use blue. Some extra thread lock on there. Honestly, goop up the end a little bit. What that does is kind of allow the thread lock to seep in a little bit onto the motor shaft, and it does help keep that gear from moving around. And I admit I didn't do a good job of this last time, and that's probably what caused all my grief. And when you get your pinion in where you want it, my motor, the flat point on my shaft was facing down, so I'm just kind of using my pinion to turn it back up. It's not so easy to turn with your hand, but I'm turning it back up so it's on top, so I know where that is. And then I just center your pinion right on your spur gear. Try to get it perfectly centered, as centered as you can. Sometimes it'll kind of move on you and try to follow another hole, but you can keep it as centered as possible. And hopefully you kind of already have a groove that it just kind of falls into. And then tighten it really nice and snug. Sometimes I'll tighten it and wait a second and tighten it again. Sometimes I'll even loosen it a little bit and tighten it up one more time. What that does is kind of just allows that new screw on the pinion to kind of dig into the shaft and hopefully hold it on so it doesn't come off when you're out bashing. So just like that, all we got to do is put a cover on and we're back out playing again. Very simple repair. Anytime you have gear grinding, that's the first place to look. Most of the time that's where it'll happen, especially if you're running a stock gearing setup. They're not the strongest gears in the world. They do the job, but they will definitely break. Like I said, if you're doing flips or if you're on the throttle and when you land, they definitely can't handle that. Yeah, so thanks for joining us, and I'll put these two screws in and I'll get out playing with my X-Maxx. We appreciate you watching and see you next time.